Rain poured down as Sergeant Daniel Ross, a U.S. Marine on leave, spotted movement on the deserted highway. Headlights flickered over a drenched German shepherd, limping toward him, eyes wide with desperation. He stepped closer, and before he could react, the dog leaped into his arms, trembling, clutching something in her mouth. When Daniel looked down, his breath caught. A tiny newborn puppy. "Hey, easy. It's okay," he whispered. But the dog whimpered and pulled at his sleeve, trying to drag him toward the woods. Instinct told him to follow. What he found hidden beneath the trees made him freeze. This wasn't just a stray. She was a mother begging for help. And what came next would test the Marine's heart like never before. Rain pounded against the windshield as Sergeant Daniel Ross drove down the deserted highway, headlights cutting through sheets of water. It had been a long day, and his mind was tired from the endless drills and paperwork at the base. But then, something in the storm caught his eye, a small blur struggling against the wind that he slowed the truck and squinted through the downpour. A tiny German shepherd appeared, limping, soaked to the bone. Her fur was matted, and her eyes were wide, full of fear and desperation. Daniel felt a pang in his chest. He stopped and stepped out into the rain. Before he could react, the dog leaped into his arms, trembling violently. In her mouth, she clutched a tiny, shivering newborn puppy. Daniel caught his breath, wrapping his jacket around both of them. "Easy, easy now," he whispered, feeling the wet fur against his chest. The dog whimpered and pawed at his sleeve, tugging him forward as if begging him to follow. Something in her urgency told him she needed more than just shelter. She needed help for her family. Heart pounding, Daniel hoisted her carefully, holding the tiny puppy as well. "All right, girl. Lead the way," he murmured. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew one thing. He wasn't leaving her behind. The German shepherd ran ahead, her wet paws splashing through puddles as Sergeant Daniel Ross followed closely, balancing her and the tiny puppy in his arms. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the forest ahead was thick, shadows stretching between the towering pines. Each step brought him deeper into the trees, guided by the dog's urgent pulls and soft whines. The further they went, the quieter it became, broken only by the sound of wet leaves crunching underfoot. Daniel's instinct screamed that something wasn't right. "Where are you taking me?" he murmured. The dog barked softly, then darted forward again, urging him onward. Finally, a faint outline appeared through the fog, an abandoned barn, its roof sagging, windows dark. The dog stopped at the doorway, whining and pawing at the door. Daniel's heart tightened. Something was waiting inside, and the urgency in her eyes told him it was critical. He set the puppy down gently, keeping the mother dog in his arms for a moment. Then, with careful steps, he approached the barn entrance. The dog barked, low and anxious, as if warning him, but also encouraging him to enter. Daniel took a deep breath, gripping his flashlight tightly. "All right, little one. Show me what's wrong," he whispered. He had no idea the scene inside would leave him breathless. The barn smelled of damp straw and decay as Sergeant Daniel Ross stepped inside, flashlight cutting through the shadows. The mother dog whimpered softly, pressing herself against the floor as though protecting something fragile. Daniel lowered the flashlight, and his heart nearly stopped at in the corner. 3 tiny puppies lay huddled together, shivering violently. One moved weakly, another barely twitched, and the third was still. Daniel's hands shook as he gently lifted them, wrapping them in his jacket. "You're safe now," he whispered, stroking their wet fur. The mother nudged them, whining, her eyes pleading with him. Daniel radioed for backup, explaining the situation in clipped, urgent words. The storm outside seemed to grow louder, but inside, the barn was silent except for the small whimpers. Hours passed before the local animal clinic could send a team. When the rescuers arrived, Daniel carefully handed over the shivering puppies while keeping the mother close. "She's been abandoned for days," the vet said, examining the mother's body. Cuts and scars marked her past service, a silent testament to the life she had led. Daniel's gaze softened as the mother pressed her head into his chest. "You're a fighter," he whispered. "And so are they." In that moment, he realized this wasn't just a rescue. It was a mission of survival, loyalty, and hope. The next morning, Sergeant Daniel Ross couldn't shake the images from the stormy night. He returned to the barn with the vet team to ensure the mother dog and surviving puppies were stable. The sight of the tiny, Exhausted creatures curled against their mother tugged at his heart. Each whimper echoed the danger they had endured alone. Back at the clinic, Daniel contacted the base listed on the mother dog's microchip. She was a retired K-9, an officer explained. Supposedly decommissioned months ago. Budget cuts left her without a handler. Daniel's hands clenched. Decommissioned and left out in the storm? Alone, he muttered. The officer's shrug was infuriating. Rules are rules, he said. Daniel refused to accept it. He checked on the mother dog, now named Roxy, and watched as she nudged her surviving puppy, protective yet calm. Her instincts were intact, her loyalty unbroken. When a local news crew heard of the story, they arrived with cameras. Footage of a Marine cradling a soaked, abandoned K-9 mother and her puppy went viral. Comments poured in from veterans across the country, praising Daniel for rescuing one of their own. For the first time in months, Daniel felt a quiet peace. Roxy rested her head against his leg, and he whispered, "You're safe now, and we'll make sure no one ever abandons you again." Weeks passed, and Roxy slowly regained her strength. Her fur, once matted and dull, now shone in the sunlight streaming through the clinic windows. The surviving puppy, Max, followed her everywhere, their bond unbreakable. Sergeant Daniel Ross visited daily, carrying food, blankets, and treats. Each visit strengthened their connection. Training sessions began cautiously. Daniel spoke softly, guiding Roxy through basic commands and gentle exercises. She responded eagerly, her eyes bright with understanding. Max watched closely, mimicking his mother's every movement. The two dogs transformed the once quiet clinic into a space filled with warmth and laughter. One evening, while walking Roxy and Max along the riverbank, a distant thunderclap startled them. Roxy trembled, and Max whimpered. Daniel knelt, holding Roxy's muzzle gently. "You're safe now, soldier," he whispered. Her tail wagged slowly, a sign of trust and relief. In that moment, Daniel realized that their bond went beyond words. They were two survivors finding peace together. By the end of the month, Roxy and Max were ready for adoption, but Daniel couldn't let them go. Filling out the paperwork himself, he smiled at the dogs. "Looks like we're a team," he said, watching Max leap into his arms. Roxy nudged his leg, tail wagging in approval. Together, they had survived, healed, and forged a bond that neither rain, storm, nor abandonment could ever break. Spring arrived, bringing warmth and sunlight to the countryside. Sergeant Daniel Ross stepped onto the porch of his small home, Roxy trotting proudly at his side and Max bouncing ahead, tail wagging furiously. The two dogs had grown strong and healthy, their playful energy filling the air. Daniel watched them with a smile, remembering the night he had found them drenched, terrified, and alone that he walked toward the field where the storm had driven them to safety. The ground was soft, flowers beginning to bloom, and the memories of fear faded in the gentle breeze. Daniel knelt, brushing his hand through Roxy's fur. "You saved your puppy," he whispered. "And together, you saved me." Max pawed at his leg, nudging him gently. Later that afternoon, Daniel was invited to speak at a local veterans gathering. He shared the story of Roxy and Max, abandoned, yet loyal, resilient, and full of trust. The crowd listened, eyes glistening. As Daniel recounted the night he had found them, as the sun set, painting the sky in gold. Daniel knelt in the field beside Roxy and Max. He whispered softly, "Heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they have 4 legs, a wagging tail, and a heart that refuses to give up." The camera pulled back, showing the Marine and his loyal companions silhouetted against the horizon, a testament to love, loyalty, and second chances.